Hey guys, today we're driving the Lexus RCF Fuji. This is basically the track edition, but with a new name. It's limited to 60 units, and you guys know how much I love the Lexus RCF. We had one last fall, thoroughly enjoyed it. It was a fantastic car on the street and on the track. I actually considered going out and getting a used one. This RCF Fuji is focused on lightweight performance. So it's actually lighter than the new M3, M4, and remember when this came out and everyone said it was too heavy? Well, now it's actually the light one in the bunch. The MSRP on this RCF is 97 grand. As tested, it's 103,250, including delivery. Basically, this Fuji edition has the same 5-liter V8 that makes 472 horsepower, 395 pound-feet of torque, same 8-speed automatic transmission, just with carbon ceramic brakes and a lot of carbon fiber bits. And has a carbon fiber hood, roof, front spoiler, rocker panel splitters, rear diffuser, and fixed rear wing, along with titanium mufflers that look awesome. It also features 19-inch ultra lightweight forged BBS wheels, wrapped in Michelin Pilot Sport 4S tires. We've got 255 19s in the front and 275s in the rear. It's rated for 24 miles to the gallon on the highway, 16 in the city, and 19 mpg combined. But the numbers don't tell the whole story with this car. If you just judge this based on the spec sheet, you'll say, it's about as slow and 3 times as expensive as a $35,000 Camaro or something. But really, this is a very special car to drive. It blends luxury, reliability, pretty good looks. I think this looks pretty sharp, and amazing driving characteristic. Personally, I'm a big fan of the RCF. I've always enjoyed the way it drives. Yes, it's starting to feel a little bit dated at this point, especially with the 8-speed transmission, but the 5-liter V8 is the centerpiece of this car, and it is just a phenomenal engine. Whenever BMW comes out with a limited special edition that costs 110 or 120 grand, everyone just kind of shrugs it off and says, okay, well, that's BMW, it's an M3, it's expensive. But when Lexus comes out with a special edition that's only $100,000, everyone's up in arms saying it's too expensive. I think for what you get with this car, especially considering it has carbon ceramic brakes, this is a performance car unlike the LC500, and it really does deliver in that respect. It's just a little bit sharper, a little bit sweeter, slightly more finely tuned than the standard RCF that it replaces. I mean, really, there's only 60 of these units made. This video is mostly just for fun and entertainment purposes. Most people watching aren't going to be getting an RCF Fuji. Look at this interior. Super sharp. Love the Alcantara inserts. No heated or cooled seats to save weight, which I think is kind of cool. The carbon fiber interior trimming is just gorgeous. The quality of the materials and the way everything fits together is, I think, still on par with some of the best vehicles in this class. Yeah, this dash is getting a little bit dated now, but the interior on this RCF will still look and feel like this in 30 years. I can't quite say that about some of the German competitors. We get a slightly updated infotainment with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto compatibility. It works pretty well. This touchpad takes some getting used to. You guys have heard all the comments that I've had on this. This infotainment, definitely due for an update, and I'm actually really excited to see what Lexus does going forward with their new models, with their whole new control interface, especially after releasing the new NX with that new infotainment. So, this is usable. It's fine. You get used to it. We have the same drive modes that we do in the standard RCF: Eco, Normal, Custom, and Sport Plus. You can turn off traction and stability control. It even has a launch control mode, which I have not used, but apparently it'll do 60 in 4 seconds, which is pretty impressive. Before we get started with today's drive, I would like to thank our sponsor for this video, Fantom Wallet. This is my daily wallet. It's a well-engineered product that I really have enjoyed using the last year or so. This is the Fantom R. It's their higher-end model. You can bolt on a number of different attachments to the back. This is the key holder attachment, and I really like this because it kind of combines everything that I need out of my wallet. I can hold my keys, I can have a money clip on the other side that I bolt on, hold some cash, and I can fan out all my cards like this. There are a number of different finishes, color choices, card capacities, pretty much customizable to anything that you need. Check them out at fantomwallet.com and use the code TOPHER for 10% off your order. All right, let's take this thing for a drive. We have a foot-operated parking brake, just like your mother's minivan. good stuff. I love this thing. I would buy an RCF someday. I think it is just a really nice daily driver. When you first get into it, it may not be the most immediately impressive car, but it really has grown on me with more and more daily use, and I think that is the mark of an excellent Grand Tourer. And that's what this is. This is a Grand Tourer that can do some track work and slide around a bit, and I think it's all the better for the RCF Fuji enhancements. It's still comfortable, it's still pretty quiet. Really, my only complaint with this car from a performance standpoint is just the tires. Every single set of Michelin Pilot Sport 4S's that I've driven on has been loud and noisy with a ton of road noise and reverberation over potholes. That's not the Lexus RCF's fault, that's Michelin's fault. The solution? Change it out for another set of tires. That's really one of my only complaints about this car. Otherwise, well, you'll see. It's just good to drive. The V8 is surprisingly torquey. You think something that revs up to 7,300 RPM or so would be a little bit more asthmatic in the lower power band. But there's a surprising amount of torque here. And even though the 8-speed automatic takes a little bit of time to warm up and wake up, I think it utilizes it pretty well. It's a 2-stage throttle pedal, so if you really want to get into it, you can bury the pedal and get into the kickdown switch. And sometimes it's a little bit slow to respond, but once it kind of figures out what you're doing, the shifts are bang on, super accurate. The paddle shifters are really nice to use, and this becomes a really nice transmission to go through the gears. It gives you a little bit of a lurch between shifts, and in that respect, it feels kind of old school. It's not as refined and smooth as some of the newer transmissions, but I think for some reason it's a little bit more engaging and exciting because of that. Let's talk about ride quality and this adaptive suspension, because this is pretty impressive stuff. In normal mode, it's very comfortable, very livable. You could daily this car, no problem, and pretty much be driven around in complete comfort and luxury. But once you put it into Sport or Sport Plus, it really stiffens up and wakes up, and you get a pretty aggressive track suspension feel out of this RCF Fuji. This also has a Torsen limited slip differential, and in my experience this week, it's done a pretty good job putting the power down in a capable and entertaining way. But it's pretty impressive to see the difference between normal mode and Sport Plus with the suspension. It is really stiff in Sport Plus. It's pretty impressive. On dry pavement, on a warm day, the grip here is just phenomenal. You can hear on the highway there's just a little bit of road noise from those tires. Wind noise is almost inaudible. I have a fantastic driving position. Seats are perfectly low. Steering wheel comes right up to my chest. At least I'll give this car the fact that it has a very smooth transmission. When you get into the throttle, it's a smooth level of acceleration. It doesn't immediately jar you or jolt you. Basically what I'm trying to say is that this passes the wife test, which is very important. There we go. Now we're waking up a little bit. I do like driving this RCF in manual mode. The paddles are nice to use. Unfortunately, the gear selector is the wrong way. Forward is plus, back is minus, but that's okay, I can forgive it. I actually like this powertrain a lot more than any of the recent M3s because it has that V8, because it has that personality and soul to it. You'll notice that if you look in the rearview mirror that fixed rear carbon fiber spoiler divides your view a little bit, but it's just slightly below a lot of vehicles, so you can usually still tell what's behind you. One of the cons of having an aggressive track-oriented rear spoiler. I'm not a huge fan of the throttle tuning in Sport mode and Sport Plus. I might actually default to the custom drive mode in this car, and that would kind of be my favorite way to cruise around in the daily setting. You used to be able to put the RCF in Sport mode and then engage Snow, which dulled the throttle, gave you a really linear throttle, but still gave you the aggressive differential and a lot of other things. It seems like Lexus has simplified a lot of that with his RCF Fuji and just kind of tweaked some of those settings. Nothing major, not a really big deal. You can still get around it with your custom drive mode settings. And that also goes into just the level of relative simplicity of this car. There aren't tons of drive modes, tons of adjustability. In normal mode and throwing it into manual is a pretty good drive mode as it is. You don't need to feel like you're always switching around between different settings to get that exciting, perfect feel out of the car. With everything standard, it's a pretty good vehicle to drive, and it's a lot of fun and pretty engaging. I feel like so many manufacturers are trying to give cars all these different personalities and facets, and really all we need is just a good all-around car, and that's where this RCF really delivers, in my opinion. Oh, you guys, I want one of these. It is so good. Let's turn traction control back on, and we will engage cruise control. We have radar guided cruise control and lane departure alert with steering assist. Look at that. Something the M3, M4 didn't have when we had our loans, and those were around the same price, maybe a little bit less, but still, good stuff from Lexus. This is a recently improved and better tuned system, which I appreciate. Very easy to use. This little screen that pops up on the left, I think they've tweaked that around a little bit, and it doesn't stay up for as long. It's not as annoying. That was one of my complaints about Lexus cruise control, is that you always have this little screen that covers everything, and they've moved it over to the corner, and it goes away pretty quickly now, which is nice. I've had a lot of seat time in RCFs this past year, driving them to the track and just the loan that we had last year, and I can't express how good of a long-distance cruiser this car is. The seats are so comfortable. Besides the tire noise and certain types of pavement, it's very quiet in here. There's virtually no wind noise. It's just a very nice Grand Tourer. You get a decent amount of fuel range, you get a decent amount of fuel economy, and this would make just a phenomenal daily driver / road trip car that can also be a lot of fun to drive and just make every trip that much more special and unique and enjoyable. At the end of the day, this is still a Lexus, but I think it's the best performing Lexus in the lineup. It has better brake feel than the GSF used to. It's much more dynamically enjoyable and better tuned for performance driving than the LC500. I think the engine doesn't sound nearly as good, and the 8-speed automatic isn't as sweet as that 10-speed. It doesn't bark between shifts as much. But as a performance car, as a track car, It's a much more usable tool, and the handling is really well dialed in with this car, whereas the LC500 is still a comfort-oriented Grand Tourer. It's less of a performance proposition. And I think that's an important distinction to note with these Lexus models, is that this RCF doesn't really hold back from a performance perspective, from a track capability perspective. This is, I think, as fun to drive on track as the M4 was a couple weeks ago, but it still retains that level of comfort and sophistication that Lexus is known for. You get a Mark Levinson sound system, you get all the safety tech. Yes, you don't get heated and cooled seats in this RCF Fuji edition, but that's for weight savings. This thing is on a diet, and I think it's just that much better for it. It's a little bit sharper, a little bit quicker. The differences are subtle, but I think I can feel some more fine-tuning with this RCF Fuji than with the standard RCF. That said, though, this has mostly been a review on the RCF, and I think this is one of the great undervalued and underappreciated cars of the current Lexus lineup. Those who own these things and those who know, but the rest of us, I think, who have just followed and listened to all the articles that have been written about it saying that it's too heavy or too big, and I look at that as a lot of journalists just reading off of a spec sheet. Gearing is still pretty tall in this RCF. I wouldn't mind slightly shorter gearing just so you can wind out that 5-liter V8 a little bit more. All the Lexuses with this powertrain are guilty of that. Luckily, it does feel well matched with the level of power and torque from this engine. This has a great rev limiter too. I've got to say, guys, driving this car all week, it hasn't gotten old. It's just gotten more and more enjoyable with the miles. Ooh, a little wiggle from the rear end there. Seems like in this custom mode, there are no shift beeps, which was another one of my biggest annoyances and complaints with this car. Props to Lexus for fixing that, and at least getting rid of it. Another note, it seems like in this RCF Fuji, you're able to completely turn off traction control by holding the traction control button. I don't think that was the case with the last RCF that I drove. You had to do the whole pedal dance secret mode thing. Can't be for sure because we're not really on a track out here, but from my observations this week, off has been pretty much off. It's so good. While we're here, let's do a braking test and then see if we can get this launch control to work. These carbon ceramics do feel really nice. They have a much more aggressive bite than the steel brakes would, but let's see what they feel like here. Excellent feel, excellent bite. Traction off, launch control. I don't know, we just did a big smoky burnout. Let's try that one more time. We are on pretty wet pavement. Yeah, there's a lot of wheel spin there. You gotta love a launch button that just roasts the tires. That's pretty fun. I think that'll sum up our drive in the Lexus RCF Fuji. It has been a pleasure wheeling this thing around this week. It just reinstates how much I have enjoyed this car, and how maybe someday, if I can figure out a place to put it, I'll get one of these. Not the Fuji, a little bit rich for my blood, but a nice used RCF with a bunch of miles and throw a bunch more on. That would be pretty sweet. All right, guys. Well, thanks for watching. Appreciate you sticking around for this one. Very excited to see what Lexus does with their next few performance offerings. Haven't driven an IS 500 yet. Looking forward to that. If you haven't already, check out some of our videos on the RCF around Gingerman Raceway. We posted them last year. And if you just search the TheTopher RCF track video, you'll find it. Anyway, guys, you can follow me on Instagram at TheTopher2. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one. Take care. Actually, why not? Let's sneak a little sound system test in here at the end. And this Mark Levinson, it really bumps. We've done this before, but in celebration of the RCF Fuji, here you go. Pink mirrors.